Hey, you guys. We are back, Blueies and Shoeies. Rugby World Cup edition. Joined by the one and only Dwight, the Huff, Eagle Huff.
G'day,
Hoe,
g'day, g'day.
hoe gaan het, mate? Yeah, you good?
Baie goed, dankie. Baie goed.
Cheers, bro.
The
Some rugby was played on the weekend, bro. What did you think?
I'm having to drink a lot of whiskey to just try to get my nerves down still. Cause what a game, what a weekend. I mean, it just had everything, absolutely everything.
I
Who
mean,
would have thought it would have come down to charge down conversion?
yeah. I mean, both of us being box fans, but rugby lovers watching. You would have been 8 a.m. New Zealand time. Kicked off 6 a.m. for me. So not much work was done Monday morning, mate. Just as you said, looked like a man battling Parkinson's and Alzheimer's. After that
Yeah,
game, sort of shaking, trying to hold my coffee type thing, mate, spilling it down my shirt. But some incredible rugby was played. What we will do on this podcast is focus in particularly on the two titanic tussles between Ireland and New Zealand. To begin with, we'll then speak about the Le Bleu and Box, as well as our initial thoughts into the semi-finals that lay ahead. With that, let's kick off, get straight into it. What I'll aim to do, Dwight, I'll throw in some of my key takeaways for the game, mate, and I know you've been looking at a few stats and we'll compare some notes. So if and I do apologise to everyone watching on YouTube if you're not on Spotify, but I just haven't had the time today to actually write my notes down, so I've got them on my phone. I'll begin with what I thought was a critical part of that Ireland New Zealand game, mate, and what was key for me was at the breakdown. I mean, Sam Cane made a number of big tackles and possibly one of the best games I've seen him play. Because I've certainly been in the camp that he's not good enough. But I think to add to that, Van der Fleer did not look like he had any form of influence as he's had and shown over the last couple of years. Caelan Doris included. All we saw was Adi Severe winning critical breakdowns at critical moments during the game, mate. So, I mean, I don't know what your thoughts were, but Ireland just didn't. I don't know. I don't know if there's any stats, but I certainly didn't see huge amounts of turnover for Ireland at the breakdown.
no, that's it, and it's because I think you've said it there. You weren't alone in the anti Sam Cane camp. But I think we discussed it last week. I said
We're a big
if there's a
group.
game
We
is
like to catch up. We like to share
yeah,
beers and comments
beers and
online.
yeah, especially the Irish ones that told him he can't ruck.
Yeah,
But no, listen, I mean the reason you didn't see them was just physically they got beasted. Uh,
I just didn't
that's
see
the
that
thing.
happening, mate. I'll be honest.
Sam
Like,
Cane just rocked up. Him and Adi Severe put in some big shifts.
yeah,
I mean, I was watching with a friend of mine who doesn't watch too much rugby, and he couldn't believe. He was like, "Where's Adi Severe's neck? Like it's just his shoulder and his head, you know." And he was just tucked in and going to work. In terms of you asking the numbers, well, it was actually quite good in terms of just the penalties and the discipline.
yeah,
And that's usually where Ireland have been quite good. They're very
yeah.
good at putting P's under defensive breakdown pressure. But we saw the street smarts as much as there's some physicality. We saw the street smarts of them. But also, Ireland had 129 rucks, where the All Blacks only had 94. So there was a big difference. But there weren't many turnovers made because they did protect the ball. It wasn't too expensive. But yeah, there was a few Irish boys that I think went missing. But you probably got to start with the loose forwards. But I mean, listen, the biggest thing is also it was just pressure. I mean, and you saw that you took out Caelan Doris. He's been superb. He's probably been for me one of the picks of the forwards until that game.
Yeah.
But you just saw what pressure does.
That knock on
That knock on
to 5 minutes
straight
from
off.
the end.
You've just nearly scored a try. Bit of magic from Geordie Barrett bringing out the spaghetti legs jiu-jitsu.
Yeah,
and then you've got to kick off, and you could put pressure straight back on them. But just a spilled ball. I thought John Kerwin, or JK, he's big into mental health. He summed it up perfectly after the game, where he just said that monkey just became a gorilla by the end of that game on their back. And as that pressure came, they felt it.
Potentially, maybe during the game actually, but I could see that potentially. I didn't see it before, because I think the last World Cup, whilst they were number one a year out, they were on a steady sort of decline. The evidence was there that they weren't coming in on form. This team looked totally different. Look, it is one game, and unfortunately they're playing one of the best teams at quarterfinal stage. So it is tough, mate. So it is a flip of a coin. But I guess one of my other key points from the game is when you consider the intensity of that South African game. And I think we discussed it. Ian Foster saying ball in play time, but when any rugby fan watches that South African Ireland game and goes, the intensity of that game was so intense. Intensity was so intense. Look at my vocab. The depth of my vocab, mate. And then the Scotland game, they again looked phenomenal. They just did not give Scotland a sniff. They looked primed to really. Honestly, I couldn't see the way the ABs were going to come away with a win, but they just looked. I think they looked. I dare say they looked probably 5% off the intensity for most of the game. And then when it got to those final 10-15%, mate. I mean, I know they went through 30-odd phases, but I just never quite felt that breakthrough was coming. I'll be honest, it was more a case of would they get a penalty, but they were 4 points down anyway, so they had to score the try.
They did, and there's been quite a few comments just around. Ian Foster used the term copy and paste attack. And to be fair, that their shape of their attack is very consistent. They use the good old, people call it the Sexton loop or the Leinster loop, because they've run it for so long. But it looked a bit pedestrian, and especially in that last 15 minutes. He wasn't
taking the ball to the line, Sexton.
He wasn't.
His legs had gone. His legs had gone, mate. He was knackered, and so he wasn't taking the ball to the line.
Yeah.
Therefore, the players are there not meeting New Zealand when those balls are making the loops at that critical. That's where you find your gaps.
And the way the Irish play, we've spoken about this, that their attack is razor sharp, and they're really smart, so that they make defenders make a decision, and then they kill you on your decision.
Yeah.
But the problem was when you pedestrian and you're a bit tired.
Yeah.
You're not forcing the defender. The defender's got time and they just shift. And I mean, part of that was ball in play. So I think I saw somewhere this was 43 odd minutes. That last play went on for 4 minutes something. Yeah. So long ball in play time, but when the intensity
the
of it
Ireland
was
South
down.
African game was 27. So I think somewhere around there. 27, 29.
23.
So
that's
so it was a huge difference. A huge difference.
But the thing is, not to punt ourselves here. We said Ireland won't get past the. Well, they're not going to have to pull. Forget about that.
Yes. I'm still trying to get hold of my dad. I think he's disowned me, but
we said they wouldn't get they wouldn't get past the quarterfinals because they had 5-6 really big games.
I thought they would lose.
They started
I could see them
Romania.
Losing Sexton or having a few injuries.
Yeah. But what it came down was just pure minutes. So a mate of mine, and shout out to him, Cole Alexander van Toornhout, good old footy. Clearly too much time on his hands and spreadsheet skill. Yep. But he had worked out average minutes played across squads. Yep. And, so to put it in perspective, leading into this weekend, the Boks average was 164 minutes across their squad. New Zealand was 167.
And this is per player,
and you
right?
saw that. This was the average, but per player.
Yeah, per player. So they're variable, but per player average.
Ireland. So taking into account they're about 165, 170. Ireland 238. Yeah. Big number. They're medium, which is a bit of a different step, but that was closer to 260. And it was especially up front. A lot of their big boys had a lot of minutes on their legs, and you could see it.
Yeah.
And ultimately, that either lack of depth, lack of trust in their squad, probably did cost them in that last 15 minutes, because that's where they looked really just lacking that edge that we expect from Ireland. So there's that. The second thing is, and this is tough, but they made one critical error that, as Southern Hemisphere teams, we probably know a bit more than our Northern Hemisphere counterparts. You don't let the All Blacks get into an early lead. If you playing catch-up, if they got scoreboard pressure on you, and that you have to play catch-up rugby against the All Blacks, I call it, it takes you to the death zone in climbing, where you start running out of oxygen.
As soon as you start getting close, again, whether it's 3 points or another try, and then you've got within 3 points, and the next thing you're 6 or 7, 10 points away. It just saps the energy out of you, right? And you're continuously fighting an uphill battle. It reminded me of South Africa, France a couple of year or so ago. And I mean, we lost Peter Steph du Toit early to a red card, but we came really close in the end. But just that sort of 13 odd point advantage they had. Again, it's so hard to overcome, especially when you consider the quality of the opposition.
Yep. So that was it. And listen, I mean, other than that, if you look at all the stats, you would have thought, Ireland would have won. They had 59% territory. They had 55% possession.
Unbelievable.
They had their gain line success was really good. They to put it in perspective, we're talking about that Leinster loop and running these things. They had 325 passes versus New Zealand's 137. Jeez, they used the ball, they made them work. Yep, but they just didn't. And I think the key in telling stat is New Zealand kicked more than Ireland did. And when I say kicked more than that, New Zealand had 33 kicks. I think I need to go double check some others, but I think that was the most out of any of the quarterfinalists. And 20 versus Ireland only had 20.
This is coming from teams that like to apparently have ball in hand. So I think we spoke about the narrative of French flair last week, and actually, they're actually I wouldn't say they're pragmatic, but they do kick the ball a lot, under Gautier and the like. So those narratives can often can often be sort of old narratives, right? And I think what's quite interesting is post game, Sexton said, we felt like New Zealand sucker punched them, and they had to work really hard for their points, which I thought was a very astute assessment when you consider the Jordan try in particular. As they're getting back in the game, first phase off a set play, boom, gone, and you just go, Jesus.
That trial, one was something special, but two, I mentioned last week, Joe Schmidt, he knows them. He saw that was clearly a systems error. Dan Sheehan's really good. He's really fast.
I think it was between Sheehan and Van der Fleer went right through the middle. I mean, we consider those two athletes.
What they did, the All Blacks do what the All Blacks did. They painted a picture, and then they changed it really fast. And it's those fast-moving pictures that kill defenders, and it was a classic Ireland play. But listen, it skinned them and it won the game. Pretty much.
It was nice to see almost Richie Mwanga almost have one of his Crusader games, mate, because he was very
silent
naughty.
assassin, that man.
Yeah, I mean I love seeing him when he's in full flow. I think the whole of New Zealand really haven't been quite themselves over the last few years. But when he does turn it on, obviously New Zealand are going to be very difficult to beat. If we've touched on the difficulty of the 13 points. For me, mate, one of the big points, and I almost felt there was similarities with Kitchoff, but just a little bit different, is the scrum. I mean, I thought visually you go, Ireland have pushed New Zealand back, and New Zealand had actually looked like they'd been pushed back a few times, and Wayne Barnes called it New Zealand's favour. Porter was getting penalised a lot, and when I sort of mentioned it at the start there, you could see the frustration on this guy's face. One with the try that never was, with Barrett holding it up, he got into a scuffle then with players. There was a number of instances where he was just a second away from throwing a haymaker, and I think it was because he felt he was winning the battle. I think they were saying that he was sort of pushing in, into the scrum. I've heard a couple of the Irish pundits say that he doesn't get his left arm up, and whilst his technique is perfectly in line, visually it doesn't look. It can impede the ref's decisions.
Yeah.
So I just thought, really tough, because it looked like Ireland had actually pushed New Zealand back on a few occasions there and actually lost the penalties. And I could just see Porter look like he was going to absolutely lose it in the second half there, especially when they were really trying to get in. It was becoming ever more difficult, to get back in the game.
No, it doesn't. It's the one thing I've really struggled with this World Cup is just kind of trying to get good angles on some of the footage, and we haven't had too many really good. They usually put that spider cam
one
thing.
And I thought, I could see him pushing
and
in.
I saw the one, but the one that you did see, and there's a couple, and there's a few I saw on Twitter. X is, but the telltale sign you always want to look for is where prop's backside's pointing, because that's going to tell you if he's changed his angle. It should always be, be pointing towards a try line. Because they were actually going towards the touchline, and that's what the referees look for, as a telltale sign that he's coming on an angle. And if you're coming on an angle, you're generally going to go forward because it's really hard for a tight head. And to be fair, it looked like classic All Black setup. They'd spoken to Wayne Barnes about it. They'd gone to him with clips before the game, and they said, this is what he does. And he got done. The frustration, I think, from Porter's side is...
because he's a beast, and you consider the game he had against South Africa.
Yeah, that's his battle, though. That's his job.
Yeah.
And when he's feeling that's getting taken away from him, he obviously is going to get frustrated.
He's thinking in his head, I'm winning this, I'm getting penalised. Ireland then are feeling the same way in terms of they've got the possession, they've got the amount of rucks and the like, and they're still not winning. You could just see the frustrations and also, building up.
I think one of the things that might have made it change a bit is Tyrell Lomax is a really good scrummager. He's got a really good body positioning, but in terms of body shape, a lot of teams, and if you think back in the days, that you had a really broad-shouldered, big-chested type of tight head props. He's not built like that. He's actually got relatively narrow shoulders, but his power's in his hips. But what that means is when you're scrumming against him, you've got less room to move. So it actually sometimes can look like it's more of an angle. And I think that might have maybe played a part in it. But it's not like, some of these other tight heads that you're playing against in the world, or even in the All Black team. When you're playing against like Nepo Lala, he's got a totally different body shape to him.
Yeah.
He's a lot more squat, but really wide shoulder.
Porter physically looks far more dominant, at least visually. But good points. I dare say his missus is probably happy that his pal sits at his waist as well. Right.
Yeah, probably.
Right. Finally, mate, maybe circling back to what we were saying about Ireland just lacking the intensity. Big call from Farrell, and maybe the rest of the team. Should Crowley have come on for Sexton? In those final 10 minutes, just to provide a little bit more oomph and the like.
Mate, kind of damned if you do, damned if you don't.
Yeah. Hindsight's a beautiful thing, right?
No, good planning. Good coaching needs good planning. You clearly, and that game highlighted it, you call them match winners, game drivers, experienced players, whatever you want to call them. You need them on fresh in the last 20 minutes to have an influence. But the fresh is key. And, mate, 151 Test All Black came on and had the match-winning play.
Yeah, good point.
So, maybe, you don't want to be bringing an inexperienced guy on, but to be fair, they just didn't use their squad well enough. It wasn't just this game, that was the story of the World Cup, probably, to be fair.
Yeah.
Sounds critical.
And I think we discussed maybe the difficulty was the nature of the games, or the order of the games they had. So they had Romania first up. Yeah, you think back now, maybe they should have played Sexton just to get him some minutes after the suspension. Get him the 60 minutes and then take him off. But certainly for others, tight five and the like, really letting those guys come in maybe last 15 just to get a run out. Because then you take, Tonga wasn't as
weren't as good
as
probably
well
thought.
positioned as they were against South Africa. You're still playing against big boys. To then play against South Africa, and then you've got Scotland. Which are all important games. Maybe the luck of the draw didn't quite fall in their favour, but I know we sort of seem like we're banging on about Ireland. Two things for me the game really came down to, mate, ultimately at the end of the day. One was the Sexton missed penalty 5-10 minutes from the end. His run-up even just looked, he just didn't look, it looked like he almost took a jog. It didn't look like his typical...
It's that big gorilla, buddy.
Yeah.
That big fucking gorilla called pressure.
Yeah, you're right. It just did not look, I mean... You think Sexton, Ramos, Farrell, you're putting those boys up as the best in the business from goal kicking. And then just the way he approached it looked very different. And, that's a kick he would make 99 times out of 100, right?
Yep.
And then the other key point, mate, is, I forget who broke off the ball, but diving right at Barrett's sort of legs, you think, mate, just literally dive half a metre to the side and no one's stopping you, but you jump straight into the bread basket in his curly whirlies. Don't get me wrong. Still wonderful athleticism by Jody Barrett to keep that up. But you just think, mate, just dive to the side. And as soon as he broke away, I went, try. And you go, oh my God, he's jumped straight into him and give him a cuddle.
Yep.
But ultimately, when you think about those two, because if Sexton had to kick that, even without the try, they're 1 point down, then they can play for the penalty, give them a chance. But they needed the try in the end with 4 points down.
Yep. And you had pressure on them, you had all sorts, and it was just, and it's that funny thing is, pressure, you want to build it, and they let it off the other way, where, they didn't score the try, and then they dropped that kickoff.
Yeah.
It was Kelleher that broke off the back of that maul.
Yeah.
And did that. So, listen, but cliched, game of inches, mate.
Sexton, tough year to finish, mate. A glittering career with both Leinster and Ireland losing such big games, but fabulous player. I did feel he was sort of a little bit... I did feel he got away with a little bit in terms of verbals to refs. Wonderful player. He was a spiritual leader for Ireland.
Yeah.
I think certainly one of the key points that one of the Irish fans said was, France will be devastated that Ireland are out, because when you consider how much support and how much money they were spending down the pub, that's a lot of money that's flowed outside of the French economy.
I think they drank.
They're keeping the economy afloat.
They literally drank that first stadium out of beer, apparently.
Yeah, so, unbelievable support. Listening to the singing afterwards, brilliant.
The singing, the trips,
great fans.
Yeah, and listen, everyone's saying, well, there'll be a dump of tickets now. Well, let's see. Maybe, hopefully, they still stick to it. But no, coming back to Sexton, mate, player that defined excellence, if I'm being honest. We speak about, the Leinster loop or the Sexton loop. He's put his mark on the game. If there's one thing anyone in rugby ever wants to do is to put their mark on their game, and he's done that. I thought that Andy Farrell summed it up perfectly well, where he said he will live forever in Irish rugby. Yeah. And listen, mate, as much as he's irritating, he's not going away. You'll be in a coaching box. I can't see him not
coaching, mate. He looks like a guy that's going to be...
He's so competitive.
He's so patriotic, and you can see that he's going to go, well, look, if I didn't do it as a player, I'm going to try contribute to an Irish World Cup win.
What is interesting, and we're getting ahead of ourselves here, but I think Ronan O'Gara is secretly quite happy. He didn't want it before he does, and it's going to be interesting to see if he gets that Irish job.
He did beat him in the pool stages to become the all-time point scorer, didn't he? So,
but
apparently Ronan sent him a message. O'Gara looks to be setting the world on fire as far as a coaching setup. I'm sure Sexton will follow in the same way. Kiwis immediately put themselves back in. Interestingly enough, if you recall, South Africa gave the All Blacks a mighty slap out in Nelspruit 12 months ago. 12 months ago, roughly?
No, it would have been maybe a bit more,
18 months ago.
I think it was like July last year.
Yeah, okay, 15 months we'll go with. Gave them an almighty slap, expecting another huge beatdown at Ellis Park. They pulled the rabbit out the hat to keep Fozzie's job.
Yep.
And if you recall what happened 2 weeks later, they went back to New Zealand and lost against Argentina. So that leads us on perfectly, Dwight. The Argies, right? I watched the game to no degree of expert analysis, said the absolute novice punter here, but didn't watch the game nearly as much. I mean, they haven't set the world on fire this World Cup. I mean, that first game was atrocious, I thought, against England in particular. But they make the game scrappy. They've got a lot of heart, the RGs. What are your thoughts, mate? I mean, we obviously don't know teams yet and the like. We won't spend a huge amount of time on it, but they have beaten them. So there is a little bit of... I think we discussed, it's hard when you've never beaten a team ever to believe there's that hope. There is a bit of hope. It's probably very small hope, but what are your thoughts, mate?
Listen, the secret to Argentina, and this is actually becoming a lot of test rugby, and we saw it at the last World Cup with England-New Zealand semi-final, you've got to be emotionally up.
Yeah.
This is hard to do emotionally up 3 weeks in a row, but if there's a time you've got to do it, it's now. You do worry, did the All Blacks play their final last week?
Yeah.
And the RGs will be up for this. Emotionally, they'll be there. So I think it's going to be
tight. They always make games scrappy.
They do.
At the breakdown, they're just always annoying. They're always between.
But that comes to the thing: is their discipline is still a problem.
Yeah.
I'll be honest. I haven't watched the game in as much detail as I would like. As you said, this is part time for us. We're both bloody migrants with young families, so we haven't had enough time to go through it in detail. But they know how to beat them. They will be able to beat them. But yes, so won Ellis Park, came back, lost. A week later, they actually played. I was at the game, and then they took 50 points.
Yeah.
So,
New Zealand are overwhelming favourites, right? But you got to say if Argentina are in it with 10-15 to go. Does New Zealand start feeling that Irish pressure in the last 10-15? Because the reality is for an Argentina and certainly equally for England, no one's expecting them to win, right? So it's a great place to be. I don't know if Matera's fit, but if they can really, they're a physical pack. So I think New Zealand forward pack for me will have to match what they did against Ireland.
Yep.
And if that happens, I can't see another winner. But if the RGs are able to, really cause a bit of pain up front, I mean, that's where games are dictated, right? It should be interesting.
What will be controversial call, but the Argentinian scrum has been awful. I think New Zealand could out-scrum them.
Yeah.
And that will be a problem for Argentina. But the one thing is, what you can't afford to do against Argentina is penalties. And even against Ireland, you think they were trying to be disciplined. He does, yep. New Zealand gave away 10...
And they will kick. They're not going to go for the line unless they obviously have to, right?
Have to, yep.
Yeah,
they'll
New Zealand gave away... it over at 3 points ago. 3 points ago.
10 penalties, 2 yellow cards. Don't forget those 2 yellow cards they gave away against Ireland. It's trouble, mate.
Yeah,
so,
that's a good point. New Zealand haven't themselves been free of penalties and cards. So if Argentina lay off a yellow card and they're in it in the second half, it should be interesting.
We're looking at you, Tabas Lavanini.
It's
like, but no, if you're asking me how I think it's going to go, New Zealand have it easily within themselves.
Yeah.
But if Argentina, just do what Argentina can do and are there physically and emotionally, it'll be a fight.
Right. Well, we're saying New Zealand by 10.
It's generous, but yeah.
Yep. You want to stay two full scores away, right?
Yeah.
Right, let's move on, mate. to the other blockbuster clash of the weekend. La Marseillaise, the beautiful French anthem we will not hear again. The only France still in the World Cup is Big Francie Malherbe. France. Yeah. Mate, this has got to be one of the greatest games I've ever seen. Easy for me to say. The one thing I did feel, and on Rugby Pass, there was 3 French fellas getting interviewed after the game. How you feeling? Some of the nicest, most humble blokes you'll ever see. Devastated. But one of them was said, I'm really proud about how they performed and how they held themselves. Honestly, in that second half, I thought, look, if South Africa lose this, I'll be gutted. But man, I'm so fucking proud about how they went about it, how they performed. Because look, when Etzebeth got sent off, and I'll get through my key talking points, but I just thought, geez, I could see them getting a double-digit lead here. Their forward pack, which looked ferocious, and that's coming from a South African saying they looked ferocious, thinking that Etzebeth's off, they've had half time to rest. These boys are going to come in and absolutely destroy us, and by hook or crook, we stayed in it. And what a game, mate. I mean, I'll get to my talking points, but that first half, I think Squid's Rugby, who, I pay homage to that lad. I mean, what a legend. But even he tweeted out saying that might be the greatest first half of rugby I've ever seen.
Yep. 6 tries in a quarter-final. In a half. It had everything.
Yeah.
But, mate, the one thing is, they talk ball and play time or this or that and all those things. Mate, they're collisions. The hits, it had everything. Listen, mate, I'm still. You were talking about it. I was nearly a bit of PSD there. The bloody anxiousness was coming back, and it was a great game. I'm grateful South Africa came out. The France can be very proud. Listen, you can't not be proud with effort like that. Both teams.
That's why I feel the same with Ireland, right? It's a toss of a coin in this game.
It is.
And
especially
Ireland's going to get this tag, right, of not getting over it. But it is such a toss of a coin. We're dissecting minute details here.
But the one thing is you saw in this game we talk about it, we started the podcast with it when we first started. People don't understand the symbolism and the meaning of what the Springboks mean to South Africans.
South Africa, yeah.
Especially South Africans abroad, I feel, but also within South Africa because there's so many struggles.
Yeah.
But the thing is, you're in a struggle, so you got to fight. You got to show that resilience. You got to fight and scrap for everything. And I mean, you saw it to the bitter end. And I think, again, in talking points, we'll get to it. And I hate to single out players, but you know my love-hate relationship with Faf. But you saw it there where he got the strip at the end. You know, loose head prop on the ball. Look at me.
How did he stick his arm in
He just didn't let it go. And he found, and it's... there's an analogy we use. Sorry, I know this is a family podcast, but I used to just love it. But we used to talk about, I won't use the word, but it's if you have a pack of township dogs, and you threw a steak in there. There's a dog that comes out there with that steak. That's the boy you want.
That's the alpha.
Yeah. And that's in South Africa and South African coaching. That's what
Faf.
Yeah.
And he's generally got a big long set of hair on top of his head.
Oh, it could have been pretty much any of that 23. You could have called him Urban. You could have called him.
There could have been so many. There could have been so many players in the game, mate. But what a game! Some of my key things, mate, was I think I touched on earlier. Let me just get his name. I think South Africa. I was sort of when I watched the game back a second time. Realizing that the strategic decisions, both of the 5-3 bench, but how we countered the way France like to play. We saw how New Zealand really struggled with that in the first game, and the idea to, after testing the ball down Pinot's side of the wing, Lebok launching big kicks with I think Urban and Peter Steph du Toit, against the young 20-year-old winger. His name is Louis Barry.
Paris.
And what did we got 2 tries from that early on.
Mate, as much as we said against the All Blacks, you can't let them get into an early point lead because you're in trouble.
Yeah.
If you're not going to take your hard balls against the Springboks, you're in for a tough
Good
night,
luck,
mate.
yeah.
And again, I don't think the world appreciates how good Jacques Nienaber and Rassi are as coaches.
Geniuses.
I think the whole video and all the clickbaity stuff that he does so bloody well.
Yeah, but some people forget about it.
Forget about it. I laughed when they chose a traditional bench and it threw everyone by surprise. That's just the disruptor he is. But, one of the biggest things you want in rugby is you want to create mismatches. Big versus small, fast versus slow, take your pick. Tired versus...
Good point.
Everything. Mate, they manufactured that. They left those 2 big boys against a little winger who clearly they'd picked something up in videos, hasn't been tested. International rugby with 120 kilo guys wanted to throttle you.
Yeah, they weren't jumping. They were just literally putting their hands up
and slapping it because you slapping it because you go, well, if I catch it, I'm getting slammed. I'm just going to slap it.
Yeah.
And mate, Circulisi waiting for the turnover. The winger, if it was either Cheslin or Orense around the backside, boom.
But also the vital component, Dupont was nowhere around, so that if France did get the ball to marshal his troops, so he was on typically at least middle or the other end of the park.
Yep.
And they kept the ball away from him, targeted the young winger, and it came up trumps twice, mate. And so
you got to doff your cap to Reinach and Marnie Libok because they put the kicks where they needed to be. They were perfect contestables.
Yeah.
Coming back to my favourite stat, South Africa. If you look at all the stats, you wouldn't have thought they were in the game. Territory 63% to France. Possession was 60.
So
40,
France had 60 odd percent, didn't they?
63%.
Possession.
Possession was also 60%.
Jeez, unbelievable, mate.
So
Similarity of those 2 games.
Put it this way: South Africa made 158 tackles. France made 92.
Wow.
But the one stat, South Africa, even though they only had 40% of the ball, 27 kicks. France were 24. South Africa regathered 6 of their 27 kicks.
Yeah.
And that was probably the difference.
Yeah.
Well, Cheslin's, that was the difference. But kicking and those contestable kicks made a huge difference.
What kind of freakish ability, when we talk about what it means, I know the South Africans mentioned it, you don't stop running till they've got over the line or you've made that tackle on the line.
It's never a lost cause. It's never a lost cause until you stop.
Yeah, and Cheslin mentioned it. He knows that Ramos takes his time in his run up.
Mate,
he's played with him at Toulouse.
Yep.
To have the ability, but also the heart to make that run, and he made it comfortably in the end. He could have practically called it. He barely spilt his champagne that he was holding in his left hand. Unbelievable.
Half a second more, he would have picked the ball up, top thing.
Yeah.
My uncle sent me a video of someone that was there, and he was literally right behind it recording it, and you see it set up. They both wingers knew exactly where they needed to stand. Listen, the analysts did their job there, but also I think everyone forgot how quick Cheslin Colby actually is.
Mate.
Hey, listen, his cousin's the fastest man in the world over 400 metres, mate. There's good genetics there.
There's a bit of good breeding happening there, mate. I tell you what, you don't want to let those 2 stallions just go out to stud for nothing.
Yep, exactly. But the one thing also I got to get we can talk every Springbok player, but the one thing you got to also give Cheslin Colby, BMT, big match temperament.
Yeah.
In big games he's there, and X factor. If you need someone to do something where that is uncalled for, and this was on the defensive side of the ball, but I mean, he did some magic on attack.
Brilliant on defense.
That's why he was the world's best played rugby player for a while.
Dude, brilliant on defence. It's so good to see him back in full flow. While we're on Cheslin, we're also bringing in Kirtley, Orense, as far as and then also touching on the point that we made earlier about Rassi and Jacques. The idea of, and it's strange because South Africa, France did kick the ball after pretty much any second or third phase. They had the ball, kick forward for South Africa to then run the ball back, but equally to secure most of those breakdowns. Once they eventually got taken back. I mean, I think that might have just been by coincidence that it seemed like Colby seemed to get more of the ball. But I mean, between him and Kirtley running the ball back, often being their first defender, and just giving us a little bit of that security running the ball back rather than getting in that kicking battle, they clearly decided between the two wingers we're not going to win that. And
mate, they just super brave.
You're talking about two guys, 10 years ago, they're not even getting close to Springbok cap. Because that mentality of they're going to be 6'4"
to go play sevens. Yep. Yeah. Exactly. And that's the joys of what this leadership and management team have brought in.
Yep.
And you got to respect it. But we spoke about it that last game, and I said the opportunity for South Africa is to run that back, go into the middle, because those French forwards just pack that middle. That's when they catch their breath, they catch their rest. So we did a bit of that. But then, I mean, look what the coaches hit us with. Mark in the 22 scrum. When have anyone ever seen anything? But you listen to Walrus, he said they did it perfect. And, I've a mate of mine, Jared Taylor, shout out to him if you listen to the podcast. He played quite a bit in France. He said the mentality and the psyche in France is if you start losing a scrum battle and teams want to scrum you, you're in trouble, like psychologically. And
your contract's getting ripped up.
master stroke by the brain's trust to disrupt that French pattern, and they just had to stop it.
I would have expected a bit more kicking tennis before then running it back, but literally they never kicked the ball. I can't. Yeah, and so as you said, don't let the forwards catch their breath. That might have contributed to them not really knocking South Africa off early in the second half for that Etzebeth.
Yeah.
When you think about Antonio, I mean, that's one of my other points. I mean, I've really seen a team that can match or even destroy South Africa up front.
Oh, mate,
and those first 15, 20 minutes were some of the most brutal runs I've ever seen. If I think about Cyril Bay. Yeah, Cyril Bay, Antonio, that Muvaka, who doesn't look as big, but powerful, dynamic. I mean, he's right up there with Sheehan in terms of footwork. I mean, unbelievable. To
game of his
Aldred, Olivon, and Dante. You're just looking at guys that are made out of granite, mate.
Yeah, but you saw Aldred go off early. I think he struggled, but Dante was every here. Listen, the French played well. If there's,
I would hate to imagine having to square up against Dante, and you end up punching him, and you're like, oh, God. Shit.
The way he bounced Stephen Kitsoff, you don't see Sparsy Plum go backwards ever.
Mate,
he knocked her.
He is made of granite, that dude, bro.
Yeah,
absolute granite.
So yeah, but listen, we won.
We won, mate. Hang on, but let's. I mean, obviously the French. Yeah.
One guy made key play. Springboks all over did key plays, but the one guy who I think deserves a bit of credit, Quacker Smith. And coming back to this, brilliant turnover. We get the ball wide. Delende was smart enough. We generate the line break. We put the kick through.
Yeah.
If you go back and watch
we needed to get out. We needed to be in their half, even if they got the ball and kicked it out. But chase down Dupont.
It was Quacker Smith. And if you go back, I challenge you to go back and watch it. He
made 3 or 4 steals within 15 minutes?
Yep. He starts behind our poor mate Billy Berry, and he gets there before him because he does. He had to then go around. He gets on the ball. He gets the turnover.
Yeah.
That penalty, again, Springbok Brain Trust, take my hats off to you. The whole game, I think we spoke about it. The whole game before that on first phase, the French hid Jalibert because Jalibert cannot tackle. Doesn't like it, can't do it.
I'm a good-looking fella, I must say.
He
does want to ruin those looks, to be fair.
Etzebeth got that ball, He was. Where's Johnny Bear?
But I
Where's
tell you
Johnny
one,
Bear?
it looked like a bit of a brains trust. The leadership of Bongi, Vermeulen, and Pollard.
Yeah.
They all seem to come together and go, right, we're committing to doing this.
I was shouting, kick the 3 points.
Yeah, I was, and I just loved the South Africans got their.
There's a plan.
We could just say, put their balls on the line, got them out on the table, and just say, right, we're coming at you. But just do me a favour, and if anyone hasn't seen and you watch the highlights, RG Snyman actually ends up taking it. They then maul through Bongi. Eben's actually calling for the ball on the other side. They then throw it to Vermeulen. And then Etzebeth runs round. He was desperate for that ball, mate.
Yeah.
Watch it. I see him running that down the left. He's shouting, "Faf, faf, faf." No, he brings it back. He runs around, and then he gets the next play. The look in his eyes, he's going, "Give me that effing ball, because I'm going over here."
Waiting for Johnny Bear.
Poor Jalapere. I mean, Jesus.
Yeah,
he's gorgeous. He's gorgeous. You don't want a 6'12" Borat-looking guy who's 250 kilos stamping on your face, mate. You just don't want that, you know. Is it worth it? All those modelling contracts post-rugby. He's got to think of his career. But, no, I mean, honestly, it was just blistering. It was great to see something different. Wasn't a scrum tap, you know. It looked a little bit like URC games and some Super Rugby games, you know. Just something a bit different. It was great to see.
Mate.
Obviously, it was a good result.
any of the guys I've coached, you ask them, they'll all come back to you and say it's pretty simple. You know, I love my tap plays. I think they're the best things in rugby because you guaranteed possession. You know, scrumming a line out.
Yeah,
so
good point. Yeah, you throw
very
50-50 in there.
That, you know, good old happy feet.
Yeah.
Shout out to the guys that know what happy feet is. But no, I love that stuff. So I was glad to see it. But then we spoke about it earlier. Pressure. You got to go again. Ireland let it go the other way.
Yeah.
Straight after that, we're there. Halfway line, Quagga Smith, dominant tackle someone. He's on that ball. He was not moving.
Yeah, and look,
Penalty,
we'll speak about the
points.
referees. Let's talk about right hand on the ground. I mean, it was like for a bloody 2 seconds. Or a second. Yeah, that if that's what you're worried about after a game, I dare say South Africans certainly critical of that. You can't be. I mean, let's really put things into perspective. The speaking about pressure, just 2 instances. One, Jalabert kicking the ball backwards. I didn't think that was physically possible. I dare say I'd put my neck on the line and say I could kick further than that. It's not not a lot of money I'd put a bet on. Yeah, exactly. But kicking the ball backwards, sign of pressure, and then if you remember, Ramos kicked the ball out on the full. Was that from a 20 dropout or 22 dropout? Kicked the ball out on the full. Pressure, mate. Big pressure. So the French themselves, also a young team. Yeah, hugely talented, but a pressure building for them. Let's touch on, if we're putting our French beret on. Is it a beret?
Yeah.
They put on their head? Yeah, the French hat.
Baguette's what they eat. Beret goes on their head.
Yeah. With a baguette in our left hand and a beret on our head, let's pretend we're French and be critical of O'Keefe. Look, I thought overall good game. I would say that. However, I think the most contentious decision for me is and this we spoke about, New Zealand being 13-0 up, was the potential knock-on. Now, I don't actually know the rules. If you intercept a pass, but you purposely knock it backwards, is that still seen as an infringement?
No. Okay. And this is where it is. And Eben Etzebeth does not get enough credit for his knowledge of the rules. We saw in the URC earlier this year, he set up Joel Marler like an absolute fool.
Yeah.
Paul dislocated, he came around, stole the ball.
Yeah.
Aaron Smith on the game in the night before, or morning before, straight down.
Yeah.
If you deliberately knock it forward or you deliberately knock it down, you're in trouble.
Yeah.
If you attempt to catch it, I genuinely think Eben was trying to catch it. Like, the problem is you keep seeing all the photos. The photos are still in time. He's got one arm reached out. but he tries to then pin it between his leg and he brings
Yeah,
his other
but
arm
does
forward.
he knock it on? Because
No.
I think
He pulls it
his
backwards.
body's going forward,
Yeah.
and so visually you can go, oh, look, he's knocked it backwards. Okay, but yeah, when you touched the ball, you were here. By the time you finished, you were actually further on.
But you could
I
see...
don't know. I
No,
can
you
understand
could
it being
definitely
controversial, especially if you're in the stadium.
And we spoke about it with Ireland. It's what's the image you put in the referee's eyesight or mind?
Yeah,
He definitely was trying to rake
yeah,
it back.
good point. Yeah.
And that's,
So that's why him getting his body ahead, whether it was or wasn't 100%, I'm not sure.
No one talks
but
enough
you're
about
right.
it.
It's about the image and how you've portrayed what you've done, like you said about the scrums for New Zealand. So the second one,
mate, he had to do what he did because
exactly,
we were in trouble. But
and you
I
think
tell you
about
what,
if
no
we
one
were
talks
2
about
tries
it.
down,
And
the man
and
down.
a yellow card. But no one gives it credit. Like, I still would have loved to see that sprint race if he had caught that.
A galloping horse. But okay, so we'll move on to the second one, mate, which was the head clash. For me, anyone that wants to see him sent off is just not a rugby fan, because you can see how low he's getting. He's got his knees dipped. They've clashed. I mean, it wasn't like he's sprinted into me there. It was like one of those.
Yeah.
He was a metre away. They head clash,
And-
obviously 2 big units.
I keep forgetting the term they use, but it's like he absorbed the force. He didn't put the force into him. If it had been like, and you've gone like what Daisel, the captain of Namibia, did to DuPont. You've led,
that was
you've put
a bit
the
more
force
forward.
into it.
Yeah, okay.
Then but he didn't. I was glad common sense
What
prevailed.
did they say? Mitigation and things like that.
Yeah,
When
'cause he dipped.
he did dip, and so look, 2. You're looking at 2 there again. French in the stadium. You could tell they were fuming. Right? They were
the
livid.
one thing that and again, you got the Springboks who got faith in who they put on. We'll come back about the HIA situation later, but all the Kiwis in the room were like, "Oh, they're gonna have to sub him off. He's too much of a risk because he's had 2 close calls. One's already been a yellow card."
Yeah.
But they stuck him
Didn't
out
see
there
the
for
rest
80
of the
minutes.
game, did you?
Yeah,
I mean, he's very
Right, and we
experienced.
scored a try.
for being an enforcer. He knows, especially over the years. I mean, I think within his first 30 caps, you would have said, definitely toe the line. They might have to take him off. The guy's so experienced now on managing his game, being an enforcer, but equally playing within the rules. The one guy I would say was almost like Porter in a way, where I thought he's edging to getting a yellow card here. Porter more out of frustration about how the game was panning out. But I just thought Kitchoff was literally sucking air in those first 20 minutes, and he gave away at least 2 or 3 penalties at the breakdown coming in from the side.
I thought that one was a bit harsh, if I'm honest.
Oh, no. I mean, there was one with Khaleesi was over the ball. He ruined that one. There was one in the French half or the French 10, and one other, and I thought, geez, mate, these are racking up. And, you won't see many bigger bloody Ginger Ninja fans than myself, mate. The guys like copper locks are a thing of beauty. But
that's
I
where we're
was
so
just
lucky.
thinking we were just treading air at that time. Or treading water at that time, mate.
We were, but how lucky are we that we can just say, Kitsy, wasn't your day. It's bring on Ox. And Ox did the damage. Love that, man.
What is for non-South African fans, the big slogan by Ox Nietzsche is salads do not win scrums, people. Salads do not win scrums. Famous man around a big piece of cake.
Cake wins scrums in his mind.
Exactly.
Chocolate caramel if you have to ask him.
Yeah. If we turn to another hero of the game, and I'll speak about him and then we'll speak about the other centre, because I was actually surprised by these stats. I'll throw you a few stats very shortly. Cool. But if we think about Jesse Creel, the only man that could possibly tackle South Africa's problems. This man could tackle our problems and turn our country around, mate. This boy, old Dave. Firstly, the tackles, especially in that broken play, desperation, second half, first half broken play where the French looked like they were going to... The amount of really important tackles and getting France back 10 metres when we looked like we were about to unravel. Unbelievable. And then for that sort of Paul Scholes like through ball
Yeah.
for Cheslin Colby. Oh my God.
Had it on a string.
So sexy that was, mate. That was just beautiful. And to see Cheslin come in with his legs, just like, I mean, Pernod's just a genius on the wing, and he's rapid. To see him, I mean, he was close. I think he had Cheslin's jersey there. But to get away, it was just a gorgeous try on the break, counter-attack, sucker punch, a bit like New Zealand. Unbelievable.
One heel kick and Cheslin was gone, mate. No, he was unbelievable. Let's not even talk about his shred. The man's a freak.
Jesus, almost.
I'll hit you with the funny. This is the stat though.
Yeah.
14 tackles. That's more tackles than Ramos scored points.
Oh damn.
Ramos scored 13 points. Jesse Creel made 14 tackles. As you said though, the importance of those tackles were huge.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Still, I mean, if anyone's seen a picture of him, I mean, if that photo is not going to get you any chicks, nothing will, because chicks dig scars. The man looked a bloodied warrior after that game. But he's a good man. Actually, I've heard him speak on a couple of podcasts. He's actually such a good lad, and I'm really pleased for him.
Funny.
As much as Lukanya Am's possibly with Mark's my favourite player on the planet.
Yeah.
I'm actually so happy for him, because that's a lot of commitment over the years, playing second fiddle, not being a Springbok favourite, to really coming up trumps when it matters, mate.
Exactly. And that's what this team's so much about. So you are happy to see it. Funny story though. My much shorter tenured coaching career. I got two for this pod actually. I coached the Wits Young Guns at a stage. The defence coach. We had most of our team didn't even play first 15 at school. This was early days.
Yep.
One of our first games was we had to go play Tix in Pretoria. 10 was a guy called Andre Pollard. 12 was a guy called Dan Creel. And then 13 was a guy called Jesse Creel.
Wow.
Mate. Boy, that was a long day.
That would have been a painful trip back from Pretoria.
That was a 3-figure score, that one was. Bloody,
and that was the end of the famous Dwight Eaglehoff's coaching career.
They had Liebenberg was at 8, I think. No, they destroyed us.
It's like it's like me and you strapping up against those boys.
Yeah, I know, mate. It wasn't even a contest, that was. But no, shout out to my Vitsies, though, because they were good. Funny story, though. Quagga Smith coming through the Golden Lions. I was one of the selectors for Craven Week doing my time in those days. Doesn't play in the first few rounds. Named at 7, Quagga Smith. I might have been one of the people that were like, well, hang on, we need to see this guy. You can't just put him in the name sheet if he hasn't played in the trials. Let's just say he played 20 minutes in the trials. Yeah, and he was the first name down on the starting sheet, mate.
For the next game, yeah. Well, I mean, I dare say the Lions would have won that first Super Rugby game against, I think it was the Crusaders, had he not got sent off. When he ran in on the up and under. It was tough pill to swallow, that one. But going back to the other centres, as mentioned in terms of stats, Bundiaki against South Africa and Scotland, 19 carries. Diolande, 19 carries against Ireland and Scotland. These stats, I mean, I think Aki was man of the match on both games. 24 contact meters made by Diolande, 28 by Aki, so 4 more. 10 defenders beaten by Diolande, 7 by Aki. 1 turnover, 5 by Diolande. 15 tackles to 16. 0 penalties conceded by Diolande to 2 to Bundiaki. So you say you almost sort of edged it, but for all the hype Aki's got at the World Cup, and deservedly so, Diolande maybe doesn't quite get the salt on his steak, as it were.
Exactly, and he's played fewer games.
Yeah.
But no, listen, he was the presence. He's the rock in the Springbok midfield, and he was again. Be interesting though. I wouldn't be surprised. I'm conscious of how we're running.
Yeah.
Wouldn't be surprised though if you see Andre the Giant play against England.
Well, let's because I think we've pretty much summed up what was one of the greatest two games at World Cup history.
I can remember. Yep.
Yeah, I mean, when I watched the Ireland, I mean, you say sort of subjective, but I mean, that Ireland game was phenomenal.
That was easily one of the best games of rugby union ever played.
I just think that French game just sort of seemed to turn it up a level. But let's preview very quickly what our thoughts are going to be towards the South African-England game. We spoke about the Rassie and Jacques, their foresight in terms of managing players and the like. I've got my fingers crossed that, again, we don't necessarily do in Ireland where we sort of come off of 5% just from how physical that game was. Again, I didn't study the Fiji-England game. Look, I'm sure the Fijians would have put some shots in against the English, but yeah, they did look like they were sort of floundering a little bit throughout the tournament with energy levels and the like. So yeah, that's my sort of key concern is just, again, we might have played our final, but we should beat them. And I wouldn't be surprised, obviously, if we see Visa obviously start. Jean Klein might at least be on the bench. Who do you think starts at scrummy and flying half, mate, for the Boks?
Mate, this is what's going to be interesting. I think they might go 6-2.
Yeah,
I would like to see Lebok start again, but maybe if you need it. Listen, Andre was good, but you can see he's not match sharp. He got sold that terrible dummy with the false kick.
They both missed tackles, actually. That's probably the one area of concern.
So we'll see how they get on. Who starts? I'd like to see Monty, but I'd understand if they started 100 to just get some minutes on the clock. I mean, we've just waxed lyrical about Jesse Creel. He was pretty banged up. Interesting if they give Lukhanyo Alm a go. I don't think they will. I'd rather see maybe Moody there or Delende and Andre together.
Yeah,
who knows?
As much as I love Lukhanyo, he didn't look himself this year with his injuries. You can't bring him back for a semi-final.
He needs to be in the squad and he needs to be on the side, but I don't think he needs to be on the field.
Be there for morale. I mean, he's a vital member of the squad.
Yeah, and he's cool, calm, and the thing is, so coming to the game as a whole, I mean, England have surprised everyone making this quarterfinal. I think both of us, or me in particular, I didn't even have them get at the pool. Now they made the semi-finals. That was always just how the draw was going to go. Again, I thought Fiji were desperately unlucky. We keep talking about refereeing decisions in Tier 2 nations. I think it's an insult to call them Tier 2 nations. They played bloody good rugby. They'll beat most people.
And they squeaky bum time for the English in the end there, made with those two tries.
But what I just pet peeve of mine, call it triggering. I think that's what all the kids call it, triggering. It triggers me when a referee doesn't use his whistle. The amount of times the referee was going hands off, hands off, hands off, and then it's like, no, just use your whistle. And I thought Fiji were desperately unlucky, but regardless, we spoke about if England were going to do anything, it would be like they did in 07, where they just find a tack, they find a team, and they play English 10-man rugby, and just stoic bulldogs, and just stick to what they're good at. They're clearly doing that, and it's working. Their problem, and I always say this to the very few English friends I have, that type of rugby, the Springboks play better than the English do.
Yeah.
So
you can't. For me, you can't say Vinipola is better than Visa or Vermeulen.
No,
I mean, Ben Earls looks like a man with a bit of juice and he's competitive.
But mate, like this whole week you'll watch, it'll start again. Oh, Toje versus Eben, mate.
Yeah, I think that's well and truly. I mean, I do believe that Toje's maybe sort of getting a little bit of his form back after falling off a cliff. But I mean, since that first game of 2021 Lions tour, I've seen that guy drop off a cliff, and he's a fabulous player. But he's not even in Eben's wavelength at the moment.
Not in the big games, mate. So let's see. But I think it will still be tight.
Yeah,
Unless
I
the
agree.
Springboks really change it up. They bring on a bunch of conditioned guys that are still fresh and hungry. Maybe they do win by, let's say, 10 or
I'm
more.
also thinking today.
If the
I think that South
Springboks, if
Africa
the
have to do the
Springboks,
same
yeah,
as New Zealand,
I
get
actually,
two scores ahead.
yeah, and I don't even know if it'll get that close, but let's see. Listen, they haven't named the teams. We've got to also see which ref we end up with
Yeah.
because, yeah,
What
you're
about the
not going to
wings,
get
mate?
one
I mean,
box.
apparently Henry Ondel, who scored 5 tries in the tournament, had a bit of a barney with Owen Farrell, and
Fairs,
hence he started
there's a
getting in
surprise.
the team. Shock horror. I mean,
Yeah,
that talk about the
mate,
play with X
I
Factor.
don't know
That's
how
what
they
they're
don't
lacking
play
on the
that guy.
wings. That's what they're
Yeah,
lacking on the
because
wings,
and
mate.
they're playing Johnny May, and with all due respect to Johnny May,
I mean, the guy's past it. I mean, he used
yeah,
to
and
be rapid,
he's
but when you consider him trying to mark a Colby or a Kirtley or Moody, there's only one
yeah,
winner at the moment now.
yeah, exactly. So, and it'll be interesting to see also if they bring Freddie Stewart back. I had such a good chuckle. I mean, I didn't wake up at 4 o'clock to watch a game, but I tried. I got up a bit earlier and watched it. And, I just looked on Twitter going, "Oh, Fiji targeting Margaret Smith,"
Oh, the
and
Singaporean princess,
as I
the
looked
hot
up on
stepper.
it, and the camera just panned, and there he is, mate, bloody head tape, number changed on the jersey, blood everywhere. And I thought,
It
there we
looks
go.
like an extra from a World War II film.
Yeah.
You know,
So
I mean, he's got
maybe,
a lot of
maybe they'll bring
talent.
Freddie
But
Stewart back.
I dare say they should do. I mean, he's a classic, a classic fullback, Freddie Stewart. What a good player. So I think you're going to play him there. And I mean, I dare say Marcus Smith, if he felt a bit of power against the Fijians, we wouldn't want Springbok treatment. I dare say.
Yeah.
So we're
exactly.
both going Springboks 10 plus.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah.
Okay. That's it. We've been awfully wrong on a few occasions, mates. For the final wrap up, considering we're doing these during school nights, we'll have to make up a few shoeies for all the wrong calls. But that's it. Hope everyone enjoyed it. Plug in and listen Spotify or YouTube. Like, subscribe, have a cheeky comment, especially a bit of verbal bashing to the guest. Dwight Eaglehoff, he's not going to be here for a long time, so you might as well get your verbals in while you can. And can't wait to see how the games end up, albeit this podcast might be the last one if the Springboks don't make it out. Cheers to everyone. See you later.